were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not puppy drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me this evening, we've got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening. How are we doing?
And we thought we were only going to have Craig. Craig was excited earlier because it looked like it couldn't be Craig, which meant that we just spend all night talking about Edinburgh, Craig. But
I could have put my message out there.
all your followers coming. Well, the listener figures would be through the roof.
Absolutely.
Literally, they would have been coming in through the roof with pitchforks. However, we were also joined this evening, but to balance things out, we're joined by Johnny Mcginty.
Good evening. How are we doing?
Not bad, Johnny. Not bad. You might notice I'm wearing my Doddy Gump South snood. It's rather nice. It arrived today. Look, I live in England, by the way, so this is now regulation. This is now law. I have to do this when I'm in a crowded space. But we're gonna do Doddy Gump this year. We haven't done it in years gone by. So for those that don't know, you can sign up for £20. You choose which region that you want to represent. See, the SRU got rid of regions, but Doddy's brought them back.
Absolutely.
So you sign up.
Yeah, me and Craig get to join the true Caledonian North and Midlands region.
There you go. There you go.
You see, Johnny seems to have put me into a box already, and I don't know if he's. He might be more surprised than he thinks.
Your followers won't like that, Craig.
Oh well, you know.
He'll be usurped. So yeah, you go to Doddy Aid and have a look. If you search for Doddy Gump on your apps, you can sign up for the app. £20, you get your snood, and then it's a competition between the regions to see the districts rather, I should say, to see who can walk the most or cover the most distance during January. It's a bit of a competition. I've set up a league as well, so if any listeners want to join that league, I'll share details at the start of January. I'm only intending on doing this on the walk to and from school, so I'm not intending on doing very well. But if our listeners want to have a go and compete against each other, we'll set that up. Andrew Lone, long-time listener to the podcast, says he received his Doddy Snood. He's Doddy Glasgow, so he's team the Glasgow in the West District. So that's that. In terms of where you can listen to this podcast, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Acast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and any other podcast apps. We're live at the minute on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also watch us live if you're a Patreon. If you've got patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, you can sign up for £3 a month. You get the main podcast advert free, and then you also get the bonus weekly podcast that we do as well. Once the main one's over, where we do Hands in the Ruck there now. News then. There's been a couple of bits of news. I wanted to start with Jordan Venter news. I'll start with you on this, Craig, because Jordan Venter seemed. I think the worry was that this was going to be the kind of the start of Scotland, particularly signing young players, like because he was signed at 16. He might have even been 15, I think, when he was signed. Signing players, like kids, effectively, and scouting kids and bringing them in, getting the residency, and with a view to kind of grooming them for international rugby. Now, he's played some Super Six. Obviously, he's been signed to the Edinburgh squad. He's now signed for Bath, which, God help him down in Bath at the minute. But he seems to have gone with Edinburgh's blessing. I suppose one way of looking at it is he's had his chance. It's a crowded field in the Edinburgh midfield at the minute. So fair play to him going to look for more places. The other flip side of the argument, I suppose, is its resource gone into a South African 15-year-old, where those resources could have gone into a Scottish 15-year-old prospect.
Yeah, that was the howls of disagreement that we heard when we signed him. He was quite obviously a Scotland stroke cockerel pick, and he was a big lad who was going to come in and throw some crash balls through the middle of all asunder and play probably to Cockerell's Hulk smash tune. It was a difficult one, because I think obviously we have Scotland as such are absolutely blooming with their centres. He obviously hasn't been able to go through the sort of the academy processes, as in the Scotland academy processes, because he's not Scottish and he's not a residential Scot yet. So it's been difficult, I think, and it's quite obviously he's not fitting into Mike Blair's plans. So Mike Blair said to him, "Crack on if you're going to get signed somewhere else." It must be really good. It must have been a move that he was desperately wanting, because to go to Bath and think Bath's going to be a great move for him, I think it's obviously, and that's no disrespect to him. I don't mean that the wrong way,
Yeah, I think
it takes a lot of guts for a young lad to come over at that age.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is English, Johnny, but he's South African qualified. He's born in England, but South African qualified. So I guess he's got that going from kind of playing down in England. But it does kind of feel like it's maybe we didn't see anybody else arrive. I think there was another his mate was signed for Glasgow, who I've never heard of again, who maybe Scots qualified, but I don't know. We haven't had any other signings, so it seems like the kind of the end of the experiment for the SRU of signing babies effectively and trying to get the Scots qualified.
Yeah, I think so, because Edinburgh signed that enormous Kenyan, Nigerian second rower, but nothing really seems to have come from him either.
He went somewhere. I think he's played. Yeah, I think he went to the English Championship from memory.
Because he was at school in Edinburgh, wasn't he, and then decided to come back. But yeah, it seems to have been quite a short-lived experiment, that one. And I mean, to be fair to Jordan Venter, when he came over, there was no Chris Harris, there was no Cammy Redpath, there was no Sione Tuipulotu. So the centres at international level was a totally different prospect to what it is now, and I can kind of see why you might have looked at it 3 or 4 years ago and gone, yeah, I'll go over and give that a shot. And now all of a sudden you're looking at the centres and thinking, oh, actually, I'm probably quite far down the list here.
Yeah. Other news then. The URC, the IRC, have appointed a head of match officials for the URC. So there was an elite referee manager since 2017. Apparently, who knew? Who knew that they had that much coordination at the Pro 12-14? So it's a South African though. I think my only assumption here is this is to appease the South Africans that they're appointing a South African head of match officials. So I'm going to assume it's pronounced Tappe rather than Tape Henning, which is Tappae. Anyone? You want to have a go at that?
So it sounds like a tappy. Yeah.
Or
Tappe.
Tapai.
There's no little dash on top of the E.
Ah, right, okay.
Any South African listeners, let us know. We're going to go with Tappe Henning. He's been appointed anyway. The problem is, though, still, and we talked about this previously on the podcast, he's the elite referee manager, but he's then effectively managing the referee managers within each union who then manage their referees. It's still not a centralized pool with him at the head, Johnny.
Yeah. And I think until we get that, you can appoint all the elite managers you want. I think we're going to end up having the same problems. And it's a difficult one because we don't want the referee managers in the countries to be shuffled sideways or overlooked or anything. But you do have to have consistency. So he can hand down his proclamations, but then you're still looking at 4 or 5 heads of referees that are going to look at it differently and kind of put it out the way that they would do it in their home unions. So, I mean, it might make a bit of a difference, but I don't think it's going to solve the problem.
Yeah, I guess because those referee managers within the unions, Craig, I mean, particularly in the SRU, they're not just dealing with the not Pro 14, the URC games. They're managing club games and Super 6 games as well, and they will want those to be refereed a certain way, and they'll have their own interpretation of the laws, and it's not. We're still going to get this inconsistent. It's not. I guess it's not the laws are being applied wrongly. It's just inconsistency without any kind of centralized control.
Yeah, I think the referees in the under 18s and in the Division 3 that I help coach in can't get consistency. Never mind trying to get consistency across all of Scotland. Never mind across the European continent, and then obviously the rest of the world. I think it's going to be it would be quite nice to get some consistency. I think, especially in the professional game, and if this is going to help in any way, then that'd be great. But I don't know if, mind you, I said that the World Rugby didn't have any teeth, and they did something about Razzie. So I suppose I have to eat my words there.
Yeah,
somehow.
I mean, I suppose we're not looking for it's. You're never going to get 100% consistency, and we've said before that's what makes rugby the game that we enjoy. That you play the referee, but I suppose the difference is, Johnny, that you want to turn up every week and have a rough idea of what how the referee's going to interpret the laws that week and adjust accordingly, rather than a complete guess week to week who's going to turn up and how they're going to referee the breakdown, for example.
Yeah, it's definitely the only sport, certainly that I can think of, where you probably pay almost as much attention to who the officiating team is as who's on the team sheets for your team and the opposing team. But it's also the only sport I can think of where you're asking the players to adapt to the referee's interpretation mid-game. It would be nice if you could go into the game knowing what you've got to do and how they're going to do it, because how often have we talked about Scotland games where you say, the other team adapted to the interpretation of the breakdown better than Scotland did. And it's like, at the very top elite level, you probably shouldn't be doing that mid-game. You should know what you're expecting going into it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. We'll see how that goes. We'll keep an eye on it.
It's a Danish name, by the way. I just Googled it. So I think it might be Toppy.
How's your Danish?
My guess would be it's probably Toppy. But
I tell you what, we've got, Johnny, we've got a Danish, we've got someone, we've got a friend who who lives in Denmark. So I might in a minute I might text her and ask her how do you pronounce Tappy?
And
So she's watching, she might tell us.
we're very popular in the Nordic states as well. So
We are well.
Yeah.
Hey, we do well. We were number 1 in Denmark at one point. But I suspect that's because I know 4 people in Denmark, and they all have friends, and I think they all listen to the podcast. So on
the
occasion,
rugby nation of Denmark.
yeah. Hey, there's some good rugby players. There's some good rugby clubs in Denmark. Don't knock it.
Oh no! Listen, I want to go and find out what their alcohol tastes like. No problem whatsoever.
It's expensive, Craig. That's what it tastes like.
Is that a hint? Is that a hint, Mr. Manson?
Oh, me?
I'll get started on that, will I?
Nice job.
I don't think there's much other news. We'll touch maybe upon the Bill Matter injury when we talk about Edinburgh, Craig. Should we do that? Should we talk about Edinburgh now?
Well, just the last bit of news, I think, is just saying the loss of Morgan Pollock for Carter Queen's Park.
Yeah.
Again, another player taken too soon, and my thoughts go out to her family, and obviously all of our teammates.
Yeah. I think she's really heavily involved in the club as well.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. Edinburgh then. Should we talk about Edinburgh now, Craig?
Well, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about Edinburgh. You know that.
Yeah, I mean it was a good performance by Edinburgh against Benetton. And look, and John's not here. It was Benetton, and we know what Benetton can do because we saw it last week against Glasgow.
Yes.
Benetton are a good team in the United Rugby Championship now.
I agree with that. They did exactly the same to Glasgow as they did to us when we played them at home. So I honestly can't sit here on a high horse, you know.
Yeah, and I think watching that, you could say that wasn't there wasn't much about that. Particularly when you look at the stats, that you would look and go that, or look, Benetton lost that game. It was a comprehensive victory for Edinburgh because Edinburgh played the better rugby.
Very much so. You know, they looked dangerous, and I'm going to say something rather. Well, he affected the game in 2 different ways, but actually Henry Purgos is looking quicker. I was quite taken aback. Even his wee break that he made that got us up the pitch and led to I think it was the 3rd try. You know, I think Mike Blair has had a significant difference to Edinburgh. The team is playing incredibly well. Unfortunately, they said how Henry Purgos's loose foot then took Blair, the king of Blair, out of the game and knocked him down and knocked him out. And he fell like a majestic tree that had been felled in the forests of Denmark, of all things.
If Blair Kinghorn falls over in the wood and there's no one there to hear it, does it really happen? If Blair Kinghorn has a really good game at 10 against Leinster in a wood and no one's there to see it, does it really happen?
You'll hear the Edinburgh fans shout the name, that's for sure. No,
he played well on Friday.
Hang on, can you repeat that for me, please, Johnny?
No.
Just repeat that.
We sat here last week and said we want to see him perform against a good team, and Benetton are probably the best team he's played so far, and I thought he played pretty well.
Yeah, I think I think he was probably 70% good. I think there was a little bit of, obviously he's kicking again, but also there was a couple of wee panicky passes that he can be guilty of at times. But he's again this strike runner 10 that we seem to have in him is very interesting.
Do you know, I was going to say the one thing for me, and this is where Craig's going to be complaining of how nitpicky I am, but because he's not used to 10, I think he gets involved in a lot of stuff that you don't necessarily want your 10 to do. And the strike running is one thing, but I've noticed he gets into a lot of breakdowns. And that's like, if you're a winger or a fullback, then that's absolutely fine. But you want your 10 to not be in every attacking ruck so that he's there to run the next phase. And I did spot a couple of times. I was like, he maybe shouldn't have bothered with that.
That's fixable, right? That's not the thing. Technical skills are harder to fix. Telling someone where to stand is fixable.
Yeah.
So
And he's still learning.
Yeah, and I think the one thing for me was I thought it was great, really good awareness to get that try, but still, a little bit kind of flappy in the execution and the fact they had to, it wasn't a clean touchdown. And I know it's hard with a bobbling ball, but he really could have made a better job of that so that it wasn't in question at all. And it's still moments like that, I guess, but they're rough edges that can be smoothed off. It's all. I think the more I see him at 10, the more I get it, and the more I think he's fully capable of being not just a very good club 10, but an excellent 10, and really useful at a higher level as well.
Yeah, well, it's I think you'll probably see a bit of a change over the next couple of games because from what I can hear, we're going to see Jaco back. He's back training with the squad, so and also with Damien Hoyland looking like he's going to be out for some time, we are going to need wingers, etc. So you might see him slip back into a familiar position with Jaco starting at 10 at some point, especially against, for example, it depends if he'll come out against Saracens, but against maybe the more demanding of teams, if you know what I mean.
But I mean, that would be a good test for where he is.
I'd love to see him. Yeah, I absolutely would love to see him do that, so that I can at least turn around to John and say he has been tested. But no, I think he's. It'll be interesting. He looked good. He does look good when he plays for Edinburgh. Anyway, we're happy with what he's doing, and at 10, I think he's a rough diamond, and I think Mike Blair will hone him down quite significantly.
You mentioned wingers there. I mean, it's hard not to just be absolutely besotted with Darcy Graham and absolutely everything that he does. I mean, that was just some of the stuff that he was doing. I mean, that bit where he somehow ended up in a mall and then appeared from the mall, still holding the ball, despite having loads of Benetton players around. I've watched that on replay so many times, and I've still no idea how he takes that into that bulk of players and still emerges with the ball.
I think we're seeing it a bit with Hoyland as well. The smaller gentleman, but with a huge, but with the strength that I'm amazed at the collision strength, the strength to get to when they're going into contact, when they're going into rucks to clear people out. Both him, Hoyland, Velicott, if he ever gets into contact, are showing themselves quite adept at doing what they were doing. But Darcy, Darcy's one of those players. I think he's irreplaceable, and he's mercurial is the wrong word, but he is someone who. The only maybe person you would probably kind of put him down towards is Keith Earls, I suppose. But Keith Earls isn't as willing to, doesn't have the step that I think Darcy has.
It's not just the strength; it's the power that Darcy Graham generates for someone his size is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And good to see Hamish Watson back as well, and he offloads now.
Yeah. He still was doing Hamish Watson things, I must say.
Oh yeah,
but actually, I'm going to say something here, and I'm waiting on. I'll wait and see because I'm sure the Lothian stand might not be happy, but I've got to say Jamie Ritchie is looking far more impressive this year. Mm-hmm. Jamie Ritchie, when he came on the pitch for Bill Mata. I don't know. Obviously, the international training and international games that he's played makes him look a far higher level player. But he's just for example, he took a high ball in the air that was kicked down towards him with ease and took it and then started running at pace. He's all over the park, and I'm incredibly impressed with Jamie Ritchie, and so he's starting to he's starting to mature, and get to the same levels as Hamish, and I'm really impressed with him. But Hamish, yeah, it's great to see him back, and it's good. I'm sure a few more games and he'll be fully into his stride.
You forget how tall Jamie Ritchie is sometimes.
Yeah,
He's just one of these guys. He doesn't look. He's like the anti Rishi Sunak. And then you look at him and go, "He's what? Ritchie about 6'1", and then he's 6'4", and it doesn't sound like much more, but he's just tall.
Yeah.
That's getting on for Lockhite. And I think, like you said, it sounds like there's a lot of skill work being done at Edinburgh. It certainly looks like that from the way that they're playing. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that taking a high ball is something that Jamie Ritchie was able to do in the past, Craig, but maybe he was able to do it, but he was never used in that way. So I don't know whether or not Mike Blair's just trying to diversify skills across the team.
I think I always remember a coach that I knew decided that he wanted to coach the most skillful club in Scotland and or create the most skillful club in Scotland. I always remember that comment. And actually, I think Mike Blair is on the same wavelength. I think he is this. He wants to up everybody's skills and empower. If you look across, when I was watching the game, you could see offloads from forwards, offloads from props. But for me, I think my more impressive, the most impressive thing for me was the fact that every time any player from Edinburgh was getting into contact, they put a movement in, they take a step, they try to, they were always looking to go through the gap, looking to go for the soft shoulder to make themselves more difficult to tackle, make themselves more difficult to get on the ground. And I think that's what he's bringing. I think he's, you can pass until your arms fall off, but to bring in that ability to make Grant Gilchrist believe that you can put a step in is a lot to coach. And I think that's really impressive. Yeah.
Magnus Bradbury, Johnny, I want to talk about him quickly because we've said in the past that probably of his generation of players, his form has fluctuated the most wildly from kind of being absolutely central to some of Scotland's biggest wins in the last 5-6 years to on the fringes of Edinburgh, not even guaranteed a bench spot under Richard Cockerell. But at the moment, he's looking like a really good ball carrying threat. And again, for an 80, good under the high ball from the restarts. It's encouraging stuff.
Yeah. He's so frustrating, Magnus Bradbury, because when he plays well, he plays really, really well. But if you get him on a day where he's not playing well, he's had some real off days. He brings a lot of what we always sit and talk about. You want the Scottish loose forwards to have more grit, and he's really difficult to bring down if he gets going. So if he can keep this form up, he's a real weapon. And hopefully,
and you mean weapon in the positive sense?
Weapon in the positive rugby sense, rather than he's a bit of a weapon, which I'm sure he's not. But no, if we can keep getting that form out of him, he could be a difference maker. Like you say, he's played a really big part in some massive wins, but he's got to be able to keep that form up, because when his form goes down, it goes down spectacularly.
Yeah.
But I think also, Magnus suffers from not having an arm put round him. I think if you look at his time with Cockerell, he was named captain and then threw it all away. And that was him on a naughty step, and I don't think he ever got the chance to get off it again. And also when he came into the Scotland squad, it was in the Townsend era where Townsend was banging heads with Finn. And all the turmoil that was going on with that. So I think, but actually, if you look at it, Mike Blair seems to be more of a, he knows the players. He knows he's happy to discuss things with them. He's happy to give them praise when they need the praise. And then if the same thing with Tooney now. Tooney seems to have had his eyes opened a little bit, and he seems to be becoming a more rounded coach and a more praiseworthy coach rather than constantly being a bit pissed off with everybody. So I think that's the thing with, and if you take that as mental fragility, then maybe he is. But I think
I don't take it as mental fragility, because I think we've talked about the Richard Cockrell effect before, and I think that there was a need for that early doors. And we've said this. I mean, you compare it to some of the stuff we've talked about with, like, say, Mark Dodson's approach to running the SIU as well. It's very similar. Is there is a time and a place for a coach or a leader to come in and just lay down the law and smash heads together and get rid of the dead wood and set a really strong sense of culture. And undoubtedly Richard Cockrell did that, and everyone knew where they stood with him. Yeah. I think the problem is that at some point you have to evolve. You want your coach to evolve into something different. Once you set the standards, once you've knocked the heads together, there needs to be a transition to where you then transfer the responsibility for decisions from kind of the coach to the players. And that didn't happen under Richard Cockrell, because I'm not sure he's capable of it, and that's fine. That's just the kind of guy he is, or the kind of coach. He's not someone that can let go, who can pass on that control in the same way that I think like Gregor Townsend maybe can do. And maybe Gregor Townsend in the past, I think, has maybe realised that he has maybe been too much the other way. I think certainly after the World Cup, there was maybe a bit of a change where it's all, off you go, lads, I'm going to send you on the pitch, and here's a rough game plan, and you work it out, and we'll work it out ourselves during half time to a bit more, no, this is how I want you to play, and a bit more directed. And maybe you're right, maybe that wasn't what Magnus Bradbury needed, that kind of coaching, maybe a bit more of an arm around the shoulder and support. Everyone responds differently to different styles of management, not always positively. Yeah.
I don't think anyone would describe John Barclay as mentally fragile, and he's been quite frank about the fact that with Richard Cockrell, it wasn't a great atmosphere. Yeah, so I think you do kind of have to take that into account.
Yeah. Quick word then, Matt Curry. I just wanted to mention Matt Curry, because Matt Curry's he's a kind of product of the Super Six, isn't he? And he had I thought he had an excellent game.
Yeah, he played very well, supported well, took the ball on when he needed to take the ball on. I didn't see a lot of him, because obviously you especially when you're at the game, you tend to focus on the line breaks, etc. But he looks like someone who can come in and out of the team, and you're not expecting a drop in gameplay or in standards, and he's doing a good job.
Well, I think his link play was really good. He threw a couple of really nice passes. I think he put in Buffelli in for the try. Even James Lang, I kind of expected this with James Lang, that James Lang will come in and very quietly do a job at 12, and he's coming in and very quietly done a job at 12, which that's no bad thing. I think that's a bit of stability. I think, like I said, the drop off between I think sometimes with Glasgow Emperor, the drop off between the first choice players and then maybe the third choice has often been quite sharp. But I get the impression there's a lot more depth around Edinburgh now, even though it's a leaner squad. Maybe that there's a lot more behind the kind of first and second choice players now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And everyone seems to be noticing it, and actually we're, as fans, we're looking at it and we're looking forward to playing John Anderson's real teams, and we're looking forward to see it and testing us, because obviously, we're in a situation where if we beat them, then it's Mike Blair's a genius, but if we lose against them, then it's Mike Blair's in a transitional period. So we're looking forward to building on this season, and then maybe going a bit further next season.
You've got, I mean, if the way governments act is anything to go by, Craig, then you've probably got at least 2 to 3 seasons of blaming the previous regime before you have to actually hold your hands up and admit there's a problem. I will say, I mean, there was a lot. Edinburgh still somehow made, I think it's the sheer number of tackles, it was still 91% tackle completion, but there was a lot of tackles missed. And I guess that's maybe Mike Blair hasn't quite got his backroom, kind of staff the way that he would want, because he was a late, Richard Cockrell that was mid pre-season prep that Richard Cockrell went. So maybe we'll kind of start to see that backroom staff coming together. I guess they've got to take time to gel as well.
Yeah, and they've got to also, hone their own messages as well to fit in alongside Mike Blair's message. But what I would say though is that yes, we missed a few tackles, but our scramble defence was very, very good, and we managed to keep them out virtually most of the game until they got a fairly good pick and go section going, and put a try across. I think defensively, and we're doing okay. We'll wait and see. I'm sure coming up against Leinster or Ulster, I think it'll be an interesting game defensively. But looking at teams like Scarlets, you expect a running game, and we managed to shut them down. So it's looking quite good. It's looking all right.
Well, we'll see how the weekend goes against Sarries.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. Wait and see, will
Glasgow then, Johnny. It's a better weekend this weekend.
Yep. Yeah,
Jack Dempsey.
Oh my word! What a signing! He's incredible. I just love watching him. I loved his post-match interview. I thought his performance again was great. He was well deserved for his player of the match, and I also loved the fact that he just flat out called out Will Skelton by name for Saturday as well. So I like to see that.
Yeah. But elsewhere, I mean, the discipline's maybe still an option. Was it it's like 11 penalties still? Penalties are still in double figures.
Yeah, it's that's still a problem, and I think we're still not clinical enough. We left a lot of points out there on Saturday. Leaving points on the field against Dragons is one thing, but we've got back-to-back La Rochelle and Exeter coming up, so can't be leaving points on the field against them. That needs to be tightened up a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I don't think Ross Thompson's kicking percentage isn't any better than Blair Kinghorn's, we should say. I should point that out straight away.
Yeah, but I'm still not going to say he's got fingers like cows. I don't
I thought he had another good game actually on Saturday. I thought, and his kicking out of hand's incredible. Yeah, that little kick across for Kyle Staines' try made me do a very interesting noise.
So, in fact, David Coral says my Stirling County P6s could have given that Dragons team a game. That's a fair point.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
But still, I mean, it was slightly disappointing to let in the two tries because I thought they were fairly soft tries in the end, and that's maybe again, there's still a lot of work to be done for that Glasgow team.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if they would have let those tries in if the game was closer. I think they maybe switched off a little bit by then.
Yeah. Craig, for you, what's your kind of view on the current Glasgow? I'm going to give you your chance now because John's.
I know, I was nice about Edinburgh, and he's about to slate us. I can tell.
I wouldn't dare. No, I think that yes, you can all hail Dempsey. He's a fantastic go forward number 8. The problem I have is just discipline. I think Glasgow have been and are still showing themselves as pretty ill disciplined, and Dempsey is on that edge. Of he may be a phenomenal player, and you might be at the stage where when he eventually leaves, he may be held up as a centurion for the club and a phenomenal servant for the club. I don't have a problem with that. I think the problem we have is, again, when you're led by Ryan Wilson, you tend to let the BS get in the way at times. And that's my only concern. I think they've got all the tools in the box, and they're ready to play. And I think it's going to be an interesting one. And also, if you look at the score against Scarlets, against the Dragons, it was fairly similar to ourselves, although we were away. So it's going to be an interesting 1872 Cup.
Yeah, we'll go. Hang on there. We'll build up to the 1872 another time. I don't want to get that in too early. I don't want. I mean, tools in the box is an interesting name for Ryan Wilson, Johnny. But there was a noticeable change, I thought, in Glasgow's organisation. I think the problem with Ryan Wilson is he giveth with one hand and taketh away with the other. Is that Glasgow looked much more organised generally and together than they did against Benetton the week before, but they still give away a lot of penalties. I'm not necessarily sure the problem's Ryan Wilson. I think he when he's captaining the side, that Glasgow look better.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a mountain of experience, and to be perfectly honest, and this is probably a bit of my personality coming in, I don't mind a bit of the niggle. I don't mind Batman on a bit of a wind-up, and I don't mind Xander. But the thing is, if that's going to happen while we're giving away a half dozen technical penalties at the same time, then it kind of starts to become a problem. If your DNA and your outlook of your team is going to be we're a niggly team and we're going to wind teams up and we're going to get the red mist coming down, we're going to get to them that way, fine. Don't give away 6 or 7 technical penalties at the same time, because then that's when you start to build up a lot of penalties and then it becomes a problem. So we need to decide if we're going to keep up this niggling and winding up and stuff, then we need to get our technical side nailed down. Otherwise, we need to stop the niggle until we're not giving away so many penalties.
I can't agree more with that. Glasgow have got a fair team, and they are an exciting squad. The problem, and the point I was trying to make is that you start off with a niggle, then you end up getting to a point where you're playing 16 men on the field because you're also having to deal with the referee. And I think that's my biggest problem. I always hated being marched back 10 meters because someone had piped up and said something stupid, and unfortunately Ryan Wilson is very no comment. But I've been on the end myself, but it's. Don't get me wrong. I quite no matter what I say about him and his stupid haircut, I quite like him, Ryan Wilson. But I just could do with him dispensing with the BS and just getting on and playing the game.
Yeah, I think I wish that Glasgow didn't need him. I don't want to make the Batman analogy because that wouldn't, given his history. But he's the captain Glasgow need right now, but not the one they deserve. It kind of feels like Glasgow should have better options in the back row than Ryan Wilson, but as a team, they are noticeably weaker when he's not there, and that can only. I don't think that's down to that's not down to his technical ability. It's got to be to do with the way that he captains the team.
Yeah, we have much better back row players than him. There's Jack Dempsey, Rory Darge, Tom Gordon when he comes back, Matt Fagerson. We've got some great back rows, but for some reason, the back row in particular and the whole team itself seems to be more organised and work better when Ryan Wilson's on the field.
Whether that's through sheer fear.
I don't. You see, that's the thing, though. If you watch, if you listen to him when he's not playing rugby, and you watch him and you listen to him when he's talking to referees and other players, I don't think he is a fearful person. I'll tell you who's a fearful quick captain, and that's Al Kellock. And that's someone who took them to a Pro 14 winning title. And that's what I'm trying to say. There's someone who had niggle on the field.
I guess it's that thing you don't want. You need. I guess you need a gatekeeper rather than a poacher as your captain. You need someone who's going to set the standard. You don't want the guy that you send in for the niggle and you send in who's going to be incurring penalties to then be the one that's having to speak to the referee about him making decisions against you. You want the guy that's not incurring penalties or the guy that's going to strike the fear of God in the referee, like you said, like an Al Kellock. And I'm sure Al Kellock gave away penalties in his time, but not at this. It's I suppose it's the one downside of having a back rower as your captain.
Yeah, you saw Jaco Piper in the Bulls game this week, who said to Bismarck Duplessis when Duplessis was basically doing the exact same thing. And Jaco Piper said to him and to Bongi on Benambi, you two are Springboks and role models, so start behaving better. And I don't think you could really do that to your captain. Like you can't say you're the captain, you need to get your team to behave when the person who's not behaving is the captain.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But I don't see who else Glasgow would have as captaincy material, and that's maybe the problem. There's not someone that you would say there's someone ready. There's already someone kind of born ready to come in and.
Richie Gray is the only one I can think of, and he doesn't play enough.
No.
Yeah.
I thought he had a really good game at the weekend.
Yeah.
I really liked
looking
seeing
great.
Richie Gray. Richie Gray's. It's interesting. He's made some comments about he's not given up on his international career yet, and I still think there's maybe a place for a Richie Gray in some circumstances because he does make sensible decisions. But like you say, Johnny, he's not playing enough to be in that position for Glasgow.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, until he is, he's the only other person I can think of, really, that's a sensible choice for captain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you look at Fraser Brown, the penalty machine of Fraser Brown, who has been vice captain and captain. Again, it's the same issue. And okay, fair enough, they might be believing in their club and they want to do everything for the club and they're a shirt, they're a badge grabber, and I understand that, and because I'm the same sort of player, but it's just just as you say, giving away the penalties. The only reason I gave away a lot of penalties was because I wouldn't roll away for the ruck because I was too busy trying to get my breath. But it's funny. It's funny. I was asked a question and it was. Who would, if we had the choice, who would we take from Glasgow to be an Edinburgh player? And the choice was a lot smaller than now than it probably maybe if you asked me 2 years ago.
But is that
I think that goes the same way as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say
I don't know who I would take from
squads,
Edinburgh.
though, isn't it? Yeah, that's start the quality of the squads rather than
Yeah. That's kind of what I was saying. It wasn't meant to be derogatory towards Glasgow. It was more the fact, of the squads now seem to be balanced and they have an identity.
That's it. It's good squads. It's two good squads, and I think they both play their own way. And the players that we've each got fit that.
Yeah.
So
who would you have, Craig?
For me, I probably would. I'd quite like to see Zander, and I think probably Johnny would probably say Pierre Schumann. So you'd probably like to see
Pierre Schumann.
Probably like to see that forward pack. that front row would be pretty good. But also, again, I've always been a big Richie Gray fan, and we're particularly lost in the second row, or we have gone through a patch because Ben Toulis has been out with so many injuries, niggly injuries that have caused him to be out for so long. So, and no matter what anybody says about Ben Toulis, he's a great line-out operator, and he was very, very good for Edinburgh.
Having said that, Jamie Hodgson has really impressed me for Edinburgh.
He's been great.
Yeah.
Are you happy enough with Velicott that you wouldn't take a scrum half anymore?
I am happy with Velicott. I would like a second scrum half. With Charlie Shield, I'd like to see more of Charlie Shield. I think we're. No, this is going to sound terrible, and he's a professional player, and he's been a fantastic player. But I'd like to see more of Charlie Shield than I do of Henry Purgos, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's because you know what you're getting with Henry Purgos, and I think you could see under Cockerell how frustrated Charlie Shield was, and he would show flashes of what he could do, but I don't think it was what he was being asked to do late in games.
Yeah,
and it was kind of working. Yeah. Some of it was kind of working. He'd kind of like snipe a little bit, and I don't think he was being asked to snipe, but he'd have a crack. And some of it would come off, and when it didn't come off, or there wasn't any support there, you could see he was clearly frustrated. So I think Mike Blair's way of playing, I think, will suit Charlie Shield. And certainly from what I've seen so far, is it does suit him, and he maybe needs more game time. But you know what you're getting with Henry Purgos, and it's not. yeah, it was box kicking, but I don't think that wasn't entirely his fault.
It's interesting to
no.
see. Sorry, Craig.
No, crack on, mate. On you go.
It's interesting to see kind of what an almost instant difference Mike Blair's made, because up until probably 8 weeks ago, Edinburgh fans were saying either Ali Price or George Horn's got to come across the road to Edinburgh because we can't have both Scotland scrum halves. And like now, I think you're absolutely bang on about Charlie Sheila. I think he's been brilliant. I think Vellacott's looking really good. So you're now, I mean, what, 7 rounds into the season, and all of a sudden, actually, you don't need a scrum half anymore. And that's such a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Ali Price, I thought, had a really good game at the weekend as well.
He's a shout for captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's too much for him, that's all.
Yeah.
I don't base that on anything other than you can see sometimes Ali Price gets a bit, he can let things get to him when the games aren't going Scotland or Glasgow's way.
I've got to say something very. Again, I'm going to say something that my Edinburgh friends might not like, but I actually think if you look at Xander, you look at Ali Price, who have come back from the Lions tour as different players that are absolutely, when you look at them, they're class. They've gone from a point where I said, and I'll put my hands up, Ali Price is not going on a Lions tour. And he went and he fought for his place and he got his place. Whereas if you look at Mish was up there at such a high level that he's come back from the Lions tour and he's been either so tired or he's just been off the boil since he came back, and it's been quite a shift. And it's I'm sure Mish will come back. But I'm blaming his haircut at the moment. They've cut his hair, so he's gone off the boil a little bit. But that's just going on the Ali Price thing. Ali Price has come back as a swagger's the wrong word, but he looks a properly top 10 scrum half within the world now, where I would never have put him there before.
Yeah, we might talk in Hands in the Ruck. We might talk about World Rugby's top 100 players.
Yes,
Rugby World Magazine's top 100 players. We might talk about that in Hands in the Ruck. Ali Price was in the top 20. Well, all I'll say is they spelled Greg Laidlaw wrong as number one, and they used the wrong photograph as well. Any more off Glasgow for you, Johnny? Before we move on.
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all. I will say the back line, as it is starting to take shape now, is looking very exciting.
Yep.
It was nice to see Josh Mackay finally get a run out. Seb Cancellieri's looking exciting. Cole Forbes was good again. I think once it starts to gel a bit, that's going to be really good.
And Sione Tuipulotu can play both 12 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exciting, which is good to have that diversity as well.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
It's been very good in the backs. So hopefully it gels a bit more and gets even more exciting.
Well, we'll see what happens. Speaking of Glasgow, just before we go, very quickly want to follow up the open letter we did to Glasgow, which we did get a response from about Exeter Chiefs. We will be looking at some stuff that we might do in the run-up to the Exeter Chiefs game, because I don't think there hasn't been anything further from Glasgow, so we might reach out to them and see if there's any, if they have any plans similar to Bath. I think who asked visiting Exeter fans not to wear the headdresses and do the chants. I think they probably still did the chants, but it'd be interesting to see if there's something similar from Glasgow, given that I know they've been in contact with various parties about this issue. But there's only a couple of weeks to go now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So
although Bath, to be fair, did it on the day of the game, so
they did, yes, and Glasgow may do something similar, but it'd be nice to know that they are going to do something. So we'll see what we can find out anyway. We're going to finish that there this week. We're reaching our mark. As I say, Patreons, you get your bonus episode where we've got a few things to talk about this week. Kind of slightly Scottish Rugby related and not so Scottish Rugby related for our Hands in the Ruck for the bonus podcast. For everybody else, though, and for the moment, we'll be back next week. Oh, we've got a Christmas. We're doing our Christmas party next week. Socially distanced, I have to say.
Awesome.
we've got hopefully having a special guest lined up for that as well. I don't know what format it's going to take. I might just write down some random questions on the day. Who knows? It'll be fun
Well,
and chaotic.
There's going to be no laughing about this Christmas party, that's for sure.
Absolutely no cheese and
No
wine. It's
laugh.
just cheese and wine and a business meeting.
It's not even a Christmas party.
It's a business meeting with cheese and wine, socially distanced.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll be doing that next week as a kind of a bonus. And then what we'll do is we'll then after we've had our party, for patrons we'll then drunkenly talk about the European Cup. We'll do a reverse podcast. So the nonsense will be in the main podcast, and the rugby talk we'll talk about that while we're drunk in the follow-up podcast afterwards. So that's the way around we'll do that. However, for the moment though, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Johnny and Craig.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Okay, this is getting efficient.
I know this is getting really efficient now. I'm still doing it.